in a way, and you can prioritize those in an actionable way. Now, where does this fit and how do you compare threat modeling? Here I have an overview of what we call a secure development lifecycle. You'll see that we have different stages when we develop or deploy code. You typically have a lifecycle, and typically these will be iterations, and this can be or even very small ones in DevOps improvements. But what we see is that threat modeling is really well fit for covering design flaws, and that's where the threat modeling has the biggest impact. Other issues like coding bugs are better tackled with coding guidelines, with source code reviews. Testing will help to find, I would say, security configuration issues and so on. So threat modeling is not the thing you need to cover or need to do to cover everything, but it's, if you do this well for design choices or design stages as part of your development and deployment, then it will have its the biggest typically the basic stages of threat modeling, how, for instance, Adam Shostak promoted it in his book, which I highly recommend. You, first of all, you want to understand what you're building. You create a diagram or you review a diagram. And you need to understand what can go wrong. So you'll do an identification of threats stage. This can be to Stride or to any other, I would say, checklist. And then you want to make some choices in terms of what are we going to do about these. That's obviously an important step. And then typically you want to iterate over this activity in a way that you validate what you've done. Did we do a good job? Can we learn from that from the activity, but also as a team? And from there improve the threat model and the way we can impact the software. So there are different ways to do this, but these are, I would say, the minimal basic steps based on the 4-question model for doing threat modeling. Now, why we want to do this? It's well, there's a lot of benefits of doing threat modeling. Hopefully, you've already identified those yourself if you've done them. If not, the biggest impact, obviously, is you are able to recognize or identify the biggest risk to your software and to treat those first. And so risk prioritization and making sure you have an actionable list to treat those is obviously the output of threat modeling, or should be the output of threat modeling. But a big side benefit is also that you get awareness throughout the team while doing threat modeling. And to get people and get your team and the stakeholders involved on the same page, and to create a shared vision on how to cover security or even privacy as a challenge within your team for your products or your software is a real, I would say, second benefit. Obviously, when you do this and when you have some kind of like artifacts or persistence of what you've been doing, it's useful to show afterwards that you've done, for instance, privacy by design, or whenever, I would say there's some compliance requirements. That's an additional benefit. But I would say the biggest aspect is that once you do threat modeling, you're able to
I'm sorry to interrupt.
A list of potential controls to cover the threats that you want to cover, and you can make a prioritization. Yes, yes.
We're having some audio issues hearing you. Your video is freezing once in a while, and we're having problems hearing. Can you improve
okay, I'll stop my video. Maybe this is better then.
Okay, let's try that.
Is it better?
Yeah, so far so good. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Then I'll continue. So why aren't we all doing this? Well, there's a couple of constraints. Typically it will require outside security expertise. It can take quite some time. It's difficult also to internalize and reproduce threat modeling as an activity across different applications and teams. and tools are still limited. So overall, as an activity, we see, and we got a lot of feedback from organizations and people, that it's hard to scale as an activity. And that's why we really thought about, okay, we need to do something about this. We need to have some kind of way to provide people with guidance on how to start and improve threat modeling as a practice. We need to level up our game. We need a playbook. And why did we go for a playbook? I'll explain that. But what we've done is we've pulled together different experiences that we have. We've trained hundreds of people, and we've created hundreds of threat models together with our customers. Based on that experience, based on our, I would say, experience within the OWASP community, with I myself, for instance, being active with the software assurance maturity model, Steven Wirks from our team being active in the OWASP threat modeling community, and learning from all the projects, for instance, like the Security Champions Playbook, we thought it would be interesting, and we think it would a playbook. Now, why a playbook? Because a playbook is typically a tactical guide that translates vision strategy into an actual way for organizations to implement something, or for teams to implement something. So if you relate this, or if you take the American football analogy, it plays really well, because it depends on the position on the field, the strengths, the weaknesses of the opposition, the stage of the game that you're in, that you will change your tactics and your playing tactics, and you design that and you develop that as part of a playbook. And that translates really well to threat modeling, because it's also about understanding your adversary, it's understanding your weaknesses, it's understanding what potential attackers' tactics and the way you're going to treat that. That as a way of introducing to be more attracted to it, and will be probably adopted faster when it's gamified. So that's something we see with other security aspects as well. Now, in terms of threat modeling and threat modeling playbook, what we've done is we created a threat modeling playbook based on the same structure as the AppSec Champion playbook. And what we've done is we've created 5 main stages to start up threat modeling as a security practice. And first of all, it's obviously, and I'm going to explain each of these in more detail later on, but you have to get stakeholder buy-in. You have to convince people to do this together. You can't do this alone. That's for sure. Once you've done that, it's also important that you embed this in the way your organization already handles risk. And if you've done that, if you have those 2 aspects, then you can start doing the next stages in an iterative way to improve the understanding of people involved. They've trained people to make them understand what threat modeling is about. And that's important. You have to do that first. Then you have to strengthen and embed threat modeling as a methodology in the way you work. And you have to improve the processes. And once you have that, you can start speeding that up and accelerating that and scaling that with technology. And that order is important. So first people, then processes, then technology. There's no secret sauce. This is a formula that has been working for decades. And this is the way we see, and actually we notice that organizations are able to scale up threat modeling as a more mature activity in their organization. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain each of these stages in more detail. First of all, you have to have stakeholder buy-in. You have to convince people to invest time, energy, and even euros on B, but also you have to convince them of the potential gains in their role. Once you have that, you can go to the next step and think about how are we going to inject expertise. You can do it yourself, you can hire an expert, you can go for some training, but you have to select a certain approach. What's important as this step is that you demonstrate the return on investment. The threat modeling as an activity, once you start that, you should visualize the number of findings as part of threat modeling. So your threat modeling findings should go up. in the end, this should lead also to security issues going down. So you definitely want to measure those as much as possible and visualize that so that you can demonstrate the impact of threat modeling on the way that you're working. Once you have that first important stage done, and this is then you have to think about how can we embed threat modeling in our organization, because this is about risk treatment, and normally in, I would say there's some basic risk treatment or risk management process in place. Smaller organizations, it might not be that formalized. For bigger organizations, it might be formalized. A interesting, I would say, framework to integrate this with is the ISO 20000 information risk. So it can be integrated with risk management, but it allows you to, once you start embedding and integrating that integrating it with your overall process and framework within your own organization. So if you don't have a risk management process in place, I would definitely recommend to have a look at this ISO standard. If you have an ISO standard based risk management process in place, then it's even easier. Because what we've done is we've mapped each of the activities that we have here in the playbook on the different stages in the ISO framework. And so you have to have some kind of context establishment. And these are process or technology based. You have to understand the process, introduce application risk levels, define a threat modeling methodology. These are steps which I'll explain later on. And obviously you have the risk assessment and treatment, where there's aspects that you can use. But even as important as that is, you have to make sure that you have to cover communication aspects, so that you involve people, that you create a threat modeling culture, but also that you monitor and review your threat modeling process, and that you make sure that it's being optimized. So we haven't covered every ISO 27005 step. There's a couple more here, but what we've done is we've mapped the threat modeling playbook activities on this as an overall structure to make it easier for you, I would say, to embed threat modeling as a technical activity in an overall risk framework within the organization. And that's important, that it's not a standalone activity. If you have those two steps covered, obviously you want to make sure that people that are involved understand what threat modeling is about. So make sure that you reuse the stakeholder identification from the beginning, and that you understand how their current knowledge is and what they should, or you can motivate them to start up with threat modeling, and that you start teaching them what threat modeling is really about. Now, you can also think of starting up and introducing a threat modeling specialist role. So this is, I would say, something we haven't seen before or we haven't seen that as an OWASP project so far. But what we've seen is that in organizations that scale up threat modeling is that they have at least someone, maybe not full-time, but at least part-time, that takes up the role of what we call a threat modeling specialist. To introduce threat modeling practices, to start up a security culture. And typically this would be a specialist floating between different teams or squads and helping them to do this, providing advice, to drop into a sprint, to help out teams to start up and improve their threat modeling activity. So what we recommend here is that you carve this within the organization. You can do this for small organizations, but certainly also for big organizations, and that you look for candidates to fill this in, either internally or externally. And what we've done is we've created, I would say, a job role description with the responsibilities, tasks, and the required skills and experience. And we really would like to have, I would say, welcome any feedback on that from your experience on how that works. And I'm pretty sure there's already a lot of threat modeling specialists out there that can recognize this role description. What's also important is that you have a training curriculum, and it should be at least cover threat modeling as part of an SDL, should cover the stages, have some basic methodology introduction, and cover the 4 main steps. And it should definitely be hands-on so that people that are involved understand how to practice this. And typically, you'll be introducing this to different roles and people within the development and your teams. So for everyone who will be involved remotely, you will at least like introduce this to a lunch and learn or a brown bag session. Anyone who will be involved as a more specialist role or as an AppSec champion should have like more role-based training. I would say what we think is important also from our experience in doing training is it's important to include organization-specific playbooks and also adopt training to your specific technology stack and project governance. Once you have that, you can scale this up within the organization and make sure that people understand what this is about, because that's the first important step for people getting involved. Once you have that, you will be starting your threat modeling as part of the process. So understand your current security development life cycle are doing possibly in terms of threat modeling or not. If you haven't done that, I would recommend to have a look at OWASP SAM. I'm a little bit biased here. I'm also involved in that project, but if not, if you don't have that, look at, if you don't have an SDL, look at that. What's important that for threat modeling, you already identify what you're doing. What are you doing? When are you doing it? What are the typical inputs, outputs? What are the steps? Draw that as an overview of what your current process is and map that on this playbook and see where your gaps are. Possibly you're maybe even doing other things that are not in the playbook and that you think are really valuable. Those are the things we also want, we would like to find out. So if you have those, please, I would say, let us know, and we can consider them for a next iteration in the threat modeling playbook. An important aspect here in the process part is that when you do or when you apply threat modeling is that you apply this for all applications evenly. And this is important. You do this in a risk-based approach, and you will typically have some kind of criteria to risk rate your different applications and put them in different risk buckets, like a high, medium, low risk application in terms of what the impact is for your overall business, or how these applications could be abused by a potential attacker. So I have this kind of like overview, because you typically want to start with the high risk applications first. You can't do threat modeling for all applications at the same time. That will not work. So have this kind of like prioritization in place. Choose your methodology. At least it should cover the 4-question framework, which I explained earlier on, but there's lots of methodologies available there. We're going to add a couple of pointers to different methodologies, but there's, to my knowledge, at least like 20. What's important here is that when you select a methodology, and we've added in the playbook a couple of pointers to criteria of what a threat modeling methodology would be or should have in terms of aspects. Obviously, it should be systematic. You should be able to integrate that in the way you work. It should be scalable, otherwise it will not work. But most importantly, look at what works potentially for you, try it out, and adapt it to your way of working, because that's something that's crucial here. Don't try to change the way you work to some kind of external threat modeling methodology. Adapt what works for you and scale up what works for you. That's the best way to do this. Mentioned earlier on, but I would say being put in here even more importantly, create outputs of threat model with your own risk management framework. Make sure that whenever you have, and you will have threat modeling findings, that you map that on your own risk matrix. You see here a potential risk matrix in terms of impact and probability. If you don't have that within your organization, I would definitely recommend to have to have something like this. But I would say organization already has some kind of risk treatment process. it's important to have at least like a line on risk levels, what it means to be at that level, what it means to have those kind of levels in terms of how do you escalate or accept them, and that there is a regular review process on that to make sure that something gets done with this. And this is a crucial part where threat modeling is going to fit into your risk framework within your organization. If you don't have that link, it will be very hard to scale it up. What's important also is that you agree on mitigations, because what you'll see is when you do threat modeling, it's fun, it's engaging, you find out kinds of issues, but then the next and the most important thing is, okay, what are the follow-up actions and who is going to be accountable for that, and how can I make sure, or how can we make sure as a team that this gets treated? It doesn't mean everything gets treated, but you have some kind of list actions responsible, and then make sure that that you close that loop, that action is followed up upon. And then it really comes down to optimizing the threat modeling methodology that's chosen in a way that you maybe reuse diagrams, risk calculations, that you hook and adapt into other security activities. For instance, this is a really cool first step to understand how an application works and what that is. Really valuable for anyone who would do penetration tests on your software. So that will definitely help there. It will support compliance in it. It will help audit findings. It might even improve your quality of service. So use the output of threat modeling as input to other activities like test automation and more, and even also important, align and standardize risk calculations across your teams. That's important as well. So the process part is the biggest part, obviously, because it's a methodology. Once you have that nailed down, you want to make sure that you understand that with some tooling, but that you want to underpin that with some tooling. So select some basic tools first. The most important tool is the one between your ears. That's your brain and the understanding of threat modeling. But then it's flip charts, whiteboards. Now everyone is working remotely, so have some remote collaboration tools like Miro or whiteboards in Microsoft Teams that you can use. And if you want to go further, you can even go and look for commercial or open source tools like, for instance, the OWASP Threat Dragon or other commercial tools that might help you or support you in doing threat modeling. But it's important that you first train people, that you have a decent process, and then only then look for tooling. What's important when you select tools is that you look at the typical basic aspects of a tool. You should be able to create and collaborate on threat models. You should be able to save and restore threat models to update them. And that's the primary function of any threat modeling tool. And then it should have some kind of risk-based approach to mitigate those threats. And then anything else is nice to have, provide awareness, provide documentation, share knowledge. Certainly, more important is once this starts to get some traction, a lot of the information about threat models can be considered, I would say, sensitive. So have some decent access control around this, and that you cover operational needs, so that you, for instance, integrate this within your Active Directory and so on. So these are, I would say, tips and tricks to select some tools. What's important here, and I've already mentioned it a couple of times, integrate it in your methodology. So make sure you have that you fit the tools and that you hook them into the way you develop and you deploy code. If you're doing DevOps, reuse tools, reuse diagrams, integrate with the repository. Track also any issues through your own ticketing system, reuse security system scoring and so on. So that's really important, that this is not a standalone activity, but that you embed this with the way you're working. And you might even go as far as considering threat modeling as code. So there's a couple of really neat projects out there that might help you do that if you want to go that far. And sometimes that's even the most interesting way to do this. So that's the playbook end to end. What we've I would say put a lot of effort into creating this one, And what we thought is we want to have an impact beyond our customers. We want to really make sure that organizations use this and that we can, as a community, improve this. And we're firm believers in open source. That's also the reason why we've open sourced this. So it's not only our threat modeling playbook, it's also yours to use and to improve. So we've donated this to the OWASP community as a threat modeling project, OWASP project. It's completely free to use. Use this to increase the security practice maturity. And what we really would like to have is your feedback, so that we can iterate into a next cycle and improve this threat modeling playbook even to an even better version. So I'm going to shortly show how it looks like. Yes. So it currently lives on the Thorium repository. We'll be moving it to the OWASP repository once we have one. Currently, it's the we have the OWASP playbook as a page here. So this is our, I would say, landing page on the OWASP website. We'll be improving that throughout the next couple of weeks. The playbook itself, so what I explained is that we've, I would say, created the playbook as Markdown. So each of these steps is explained in more detail and with full text, and you can navigate through the playbook. You can, and this allows you to copy paste this quite easily to adapt it to your own needs wherever necessary. And so this is the way we've produced it. In the next version, we're going to consider to either convert this to JSON or YAML for tools to be able to consume this and then reuse this. But currently this is a plain Markdown. The neat advantage of that is that we can already have like issues covered by this. So there are a couple of issues that were already treated in terms of previous people that have put or suggested improvements, and that we just can review those and integrate those. So that's the big advantage of publishing this as a Markdown. And that's the next step. I really want for you to have a look at it. If you see items that can be improved, mention that. If you see issues, I would say raise an issue through the GitHub repository. If you have improvements, please fork this, make your changes, suggest your changes through pull request, and then we can collaborate on the next version here of the playbook. So that's how the playbook works. Now, let us know what works. Let us know what doesn't work. I'm pretty sure we've missed a couple of things. And with that, I open the floor for any questions so far. So please use the Q&A in Zoom, and from there I can answer your questions. There's also a chat. If you have a chat question, you can also put it there.
Thank you, Sebastien. Let's wait for a few more minutes for queue for questions that will pop up. I think you can stop the share and put your video back on so people can also see you. There was one request made to please upload the presentation, either to your website, to the GitHub, or to what's the OWASP thing? Great.
Yeah, we'll definitely upload this presentation. If you go to the GitHub, currently there's also an earlier presentation that you can find back through the page on Thorium, which is published currently on SlideShare. But I'll publish this presentation on the GitHub repository as well. Yeah.
Excellent. Good. Anybody else? Any other questions? It was a fantastic talk that really gave us a lot of homework to do. for those of us who do threat modeling to really go through the playbook, learn the things, and give feedback, which is one of the most important things, one of the greatest things I think in the whole OWASP ecosystem, and giving feedback back to the projects and creating new projects.
All right. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't see any more questions. So, Seba,
okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I have a couple of ending slides. So I would like to thank a couple of colleagues who've worked on this. So Jonas, Joris, Steven, and Thomas. So I haven't done this alone. So they're all from Torion. But I would really like to have your name on this in a future version. I've added the links here. And then if you want to reach out, so I have my emails address, so my OWASP email address, anything OWASP related, have a look at or can contact me there. And also if you want to reach out to me for my company work, torion.com. We do have a regular newsletter on threat modeling, where we publish guest articles. So there's a lot of people from the threat modeling community. So if you go to that particular link, you'll see the previous archive of our newsletters. So I would highly recommend to do that. If you'd consider trainings, we also do and host open trainings in the next couple of months. So 17th and 18th of November. These are half-day trainings, and in January. So check them out on our page there, and then maybe you can see one of you in those trainings. Well, with that, I thank you for participating, and stay safe and healthy.
Okay, I see there's actually one question that just popped up. If you want to take a look at that.
Yeah. So the question is, suggested to threat modeling in my organization. I was asked to lead it. Where's the best place to learn how I should run threat modeling session? Really good question here. I would say go to there's a couple of OWASP resources there that will help you out. That's one pointer. Also the basics, I would say the basic steps that I explained earlier on are actually the things you should really be considering. So don't go for a very complex methodology, go for a very basic threat modeling strategy first, and start it with there, and then learn from there and learn as together with the team on how to do threat modeling. There's lots of pointers out there. An interesting pointer also, what I've put on the OWASP project page, is the OWASP Slack threat modeling community. So if you have any questions that are not answered here, definitely you can get some answers there. And there's quite some people active on that Slack channel. I would welcome you to join that one.
Excellent. And someone went through the training last year in the Global AppSec with Steven. So I think it's also a good place to start taking one of your training sessions. Excellent. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so we are done with that. The next session on this track is going to be at 12 o'clock. Let me just share. Okay, so this is track A and track B. So this is what's coming up next. At 12 o'clock, we have another talk. See you later.